The HOA told me the house next door was empty. They said it was pending approval and not yet assigned to any owner. But every night at exactly 2:15 a.m., its lights turn on. And last week, I finally found out why. Before I start, I want you to do something for me. Look at the time on your phone or your screen. What time is it where you're watching this? Because if it's already night where you are, you might want to leave at least one light on in your room. And if you've ever lived under an HOA or in a neighborhood with too many rules, go ahead and like this video now and subscribe if you want more real stories like this. Because what I'm about to tell you still makes me stare at that house every single night, waiting to see if those lights come back on. I moved into this neighborhood about 6 months ago. It was my first time living in an HOA community. You know the type. Every driveway the same, every mailbox the same, even the trees look like they've been copy-pasted down the street. The realtor called it orderly, safe, and community-driven. I just called it quiet. After years of apartment noise, I wanted quiet. On the day I moved in, the HOA president, a man named Mr. Keller, came over to introduce himself. He was in his late 50s, gray hair, combed back polo shirt, clipboard in his hand like it was attached to him. He shook my hand, looked over my shoulder at the moving truck and said, "Welcome to Maple Court. We're happy to have you here. Just make sure to read the handbook. We take our standards seriously." Then he pointed at the house directly to the right of mine. "Only one thing you really need to know about that one," he said. "It's currently vacant. The HOA owns it. Nobody lives there. So if you ever see lights or hear anything, it's probably just maintenance, probably." That word stuck with me. The house looked normal enough. Beige paint, white trim, perfectly trimmed shrubs, curtains closed on every window. The kind of house you would scroll past in a listing because it looked like every other one. For the first few weeks, nothing strange happened. I got used to the sound of sprinklers at 5 in the morning and lawnmowers on Saturday. I learned how fast the HOA sent warnings if your trash can stay outside more than a day. And I learned that everyone in this neighborhood smiled a little too wide when you passed them. The first time I noticed the light next door, it was a Wednesday. I woke up around 2:10 a.m. for no good reason. No noise, no nightmare, just that weird feeling that pulls your eyes open. My bedroom faces the side of the empty house. There's only a few feet of grass between our walls. When I turned my head toward the window, I saw a faint glow bleeding through the thin gap in my blinds. It wasn't bright, like a ceiling light. It flickered like a candle or a weak flashlight. It moved from left to right slowly, then disappeared. I propped myself up on one elbow and listened. No footsteps, no voices, just the distant hum of an air conditioner somewhere down the street. The next morning, I called the HOA office. A woman answered. Her name was Janine. She sounded cheerful, the way customer service people do when they've practiced the same greeting 100 times. "Good morning, Maple Ridge Association. This is Janine. How can I help you?" "Hi," I said. "I live at number 18 next to the vacant property. I think someone might have been in there last night. I saw a light moving around." There was a pause. "Not the kind where someone is typing or reading. The kind where they don't like what they just heard." "That home," she said finally, "is HOA owned. It's currently unoccupied. There shouldn't be anyone inside." "Right, I get that," I said. "I was just thinking maybe maintenance was there." It was around 2 in the morning. "Do they ever work that late?" Her voice flattened. The fake cheer vanished. "Sir," she said quietly, "there's no maintenance scheduled for that unit at this time." "Okay. But I definitely saw—" "If you see lights again," she cut in, "please do not look directly at the windows. Report it in the morning. That's all you need to do. Don't look directly." "Thank you for calling," she said and hung up. I stared at my phone for a long minute. Don't look directly at the windows. That isn't something you tell someone unless you know there's something to see. That second night, I tried to ignore it. I went to bed early, put on a podcast and told myself that I was being dramatic. Empty houses creak. Street lights flicker. Power grids do weird things. At 2:15 a.m., my podcast cut out. My phone screen turned black for half a second. And then I saw the light again. This time it was brighter, a warm yellow glow like an old lamp, bleeding around the edges of the closed curtains in the living room window. It stayed in one place for maybe 30 seconds. Then it moved slowly, as if someone was carrying the lamp deeper into the house. I got out of bed and stood by my window, careful not to open the blinds. I watched the thin line of light moving along the wall of my room. as it passed the closest window next door. It stopped exactly at the part of the wall where my headboard was. For a few seconds, the glow stayed there steady and quiet, like someone was standing just on the other side of my wall, holding that lamp level with my face. Then it went out. The third day, I talked to my neighbor across the street. Her name was Ruth, mid-60s, always out front sweeping her walkway even when there was nothing on it. Her house was exactly across from the vacant one, so she had a clear view of both our lots. "Ruth," I said, trying to sound casual, "do you know anything about the house next door? Has anyone ever actually lived there?" The broom stopped moving. She didn't look at the house. She looked at me for a long moment instead. "They told you it's empty, didn't they?" She said, "Yeah, Keller said the HOA owns it. Janine said no one is supposed to be inside." Her mouth pressed into a thin line. "The HOA says a lot of things." I laughed awkwardly. "Okay, but seriously, have you seen anyone going in or out?" She hesitated, then leaned in closer. "They don't like us talking about it," she whispered. "But a family lived there before you moved in. A couple and their little girl. They weren't here long. Maybe 3 months. What happened? One night their porch light went out." Her voice dropped even lower. "They called the HOA 3 times about some noise in the walls. Same side as your bedroom. Next morning, a moving truck showed up. We never saw them pack. We never saw them load anything. We just saw Keller standing out front, watching the truck. And then, new blinds, new paint, new story." "You think something happened to them?" I asked. She glanced at the HOA cameras mounted on the lamppost. "Bao didn't hear that from me," she said, and went back to sweeping. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my dark living room with the TV off, watching the time crawl by on the microwave clock. At 2:10 a.m., my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. At 2:13, my porch light flickered once. At 2:14, it flickered again and stayed on, brighter than usual. At 2:15, the light next door came on. This time I opened the blinds just enough to see through. I told myself I wasn't going to look directly at the window. Just at the corner. Just a glimpse. The living room of the empty house was lit by what looked like a single lamp. The curtains were still mostly closed, but they didn't meet in the middle. Through the gap I could see just a sliver of the room, a couch, a coffee table, an old television, and a tall dark shape standing completely still. It wasn't close enough for me to see features, just an outline. But I could tell it was facing my house. I dropped the blinds and stepped back, breathing fast. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. For a second, I thought it was Janine or Keller. Like they somehow knew I'd just broken their rule. It wasn't. It was a notification from my doorbell camera, motion detected. I opened the app with shaking fingers. The live feed showed my own front porch, washed in the harsh glow of the overbright porch light. No one was there. I hit rewind and scrubbed back 15 seconds. There, for exactly one frame, something long and dark moved across the far edge of the porch. Too tall to be a person standing normally. It looked like someone stretched, like an arm and shoulder sliding across the ceiling. The next morning, there was a letter taped to my door. No envelope, just a printed notice with the HOA logo at the top. "Dear resident of Lot 18, it has come to our attention that you may be experiencing disturbances related to the neighboring property, Lot 17. Please refrain from observing or recording the interior or exterior of Lot 17 between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. continued. Attention to this property can result in fines and further action. We are monitoring the situation. Maple Ridge HOA, they knew. Somehow they knew I'd been watching and recording. I thought about deleting the footage. Instead, I downloaded it to an external drive and unplugged my camera. If you were in my place, what would you do? Would you call the police and tell them, "Hey, my HOA keeps telling me not to look at the house next door because the lights come on at exactly 2:15 every night"? Or would you do what I did? Pretend everything is normal, smile at your neighbors, and act like your own house isn't pressed up against something nobody wants to talk about. A week passed with no lights, no movement, no letters. For the first time, I started to feel silly, like maybe I'd scared myself for nothing. Then Ruth disappeared. It was a Monday. Her car was in the driveway when I left for work. Her porch light was on. Her broom was leaning against the wall like always. When I came home that evening, her garbage can was still at the curb. Her curtains were open, lights off, and the broom was gone. Her car too. Maybe she just went somewhere, I thought. Vacation, hospital, family emergency. That's what I told myself that night. The next morning, there was a white HOA van parked in front of her house. Two men in gray uniforms walked inside without knocking. They stayed about 15 minutes. When they came out, they were carrying cardboard boxes. Not full, just a few items each. By the time the sun went down, a police ho-managed sign was stuck in Ruth's front yard. They erased her in 12 hours. Like she'd never been there. That night I didn't want to look outside. I really didn't. But at 2:15 the glow bled through my blinds again. Not just from one side this time, from both. Light from Ruth's house, and light from the vacant house next door. Both at the exact same time. I opened my phone instead of the blinds and pulled up the HOA website just to distract myself. They'd posted a new rule in the community updates section. Effective immediately, residents are reminded not to interfere with occupancy assignments or HOA-owned properties. Questions regarding vacant homes will not be addressed. Do not attempt to contact prior occupants once a property has been reclaimed. Reclaimed. They didn't say resold. They didn't say reassigned. They said reclaimed. The next HOA meeting was 3 days later. I went. I shouldn't have, but I did. It was held in the community room by the pool. Fluorescent lights, folding chairs, coffee and styrofoam cups. Maybe 20 people showed up. Keller wasn't there. Instead, Janine sat at the front with two board members I hadn't met before. His name tag was still on the table, though. President M. Keller. The chair behind it was empty. They went through budget reports, event announcements, landscaping contracts. Nothing about Ruth, nothing about Lot 17. When they finally asked for questions, my hand went up before I could stop it. I have a question about the property next to me, I said. Lot 17, the one that's supposed to be empty. The room went quiet. Janine's smile didn't move, but her eyes did. They locked onto mine. Lot 17 is an HOA-managed unit, she said. All concerns about that property are handled internally. But someone goes in there, I said. Lights come on at 2:15 in the morning. I've seen it. I've recorded it. I've gotten letters telling me not to look. So either there's someone living there or... Sir, she said, her voice still sweet but hard underneath. Lot 17 is vacant. As is Lot 12 across from you. I frowned. Lot 12 isn't vacant. That's Ruth's house. Her smile got wider. Lot 12 is HOA owned. It has been for some time. There is no current resident on file. The man next to her slid a stack of papers forward, as if that proved it. I looked around the room. No one else would meet my eyes. That was the moment I realized something. In this neighborhood, being written down as vacant isn't about the house. It's about the person. I left early. I walked home faster than I meant to. That night, I didn't even pretend to sleep. I sat in a chair facing the window with the blinds barely open, heart clawing at my ribs as the digital clock on my nightstand crept toward 2:15. At 2:14, my porch light clicked on by itself. At 2:15, the lights in both houses, Lot 17 and Lot 12, came on at exactly the same time. Through the narrow gap in my blinds, I could see two sets of curtains glowing from behind, and in each gap a silhouette, tall still facing my house. Slowly, in perfect unison, both figures raised their arms. For a second, I thought they were pointing at me. Then I realized they were waving. I shut the blinds and backed away. My phone buzzed. A new email alert from the HOA. I opened it with numb fingers. Dear resident of Lot 18, congratulations. Your property has been fully approved for integration into the Maple Ridge community. Please do not be alarmed by any temporary disturbances during this process. Remember, Maple Ridge takes care of its own. Your status will be updated soon. Maple Ridge HOA, I scrolled down. At the bottom, under a table labeled Current Status of Lots 1 to 20, I found my address. Lot 18, status pending vacancy. If you were me, would you stay? Would you pretend you never saw those lights, never heard those knocks, never read that email? Or would you pack your things before the HOA decides you're just another vacant house on a quiet, perfect street? Tell me what you'd do in the comments. And if this story made you look out your own window, or think twice about the house next door, you might want to like this video and subscribe. Not for me, for yourself. Because if your neighborhood ever decides you're vacant, I hope someone out there is watching your house at 2:15 a.m. too.